Hello, everybody. This is Mr. Storm, and get ready for a long one. We have a lot to cover in this week, in this video. We're going to be talking about different objects that we can add to a Microsoft Word document. Things such as pictures or shapes or charts and tables, things like that. So let's get into it. First, let's talk about pictures. So inserting pictures into Microsoft Word can be a little bit daunting at first, but there are actually some options to make it a little bit easier, specifically text wrapping. That's something that we can talk about in just a second. Let me show you how to insert a picture. So if you go to Insert tab, you have your pictures here. You can click Pictures. That will let you choose a picture from your hard drive, and it will allow you to dump it into Microsoft Word. So let's go to my desktop. I'm sure I have a picture on here somewhere. And sure, let's do, I don't know, let's find one that's interesting. Sure, how about this logo for the Spanish Club that I built last year? So, Spanish Club logo. So that's a picture from my desktop that I was able to put into Microsoft Word. Now notice that it's big, and so it automatically pushed itself to the second page because it wouldn't fit within the margins. Now if we want to scale this image, all we have to do is look at these dots around the edges here. We have 8 dots, some on the corners, some on the sides. If I grab one of these dots, I can scale my image. I can make it a little bit skinnier. I can make it taller or shorter. I can grab the corner so that I can change the height and width at the same time. One thing I will say, if you are going to change the height or width, notice how the image gets a little bit stretched. Sometimes that won't look good with this. This is a vector image, which is something you don't really need to know about, so I'm not going to get into it. So this will actually stretch, but with photographs, it's not going to look very good when you stretch them. So you want to be careful with that. I always use the corner tools here so that I can maintain the aspect ratio as I'm rotating or as I'm scaling. Speaking of rotating, up here we have this arrow in a circle. That is our rotation tool. We can grab that and just rotate our images however we want. We can rotate it so that it's, not exactly 90 degrees, but we can rotate it around so that it looks nice in our document, however we want it to look. Okay. Now we want to talk about text wrapping. If I was to take this, let's shrink it down a little bit more. If I was to take this and I wanted it to go, I don't know, up here, right? Notice how it breaks up the text. It takes up the entire, this entire section, and it breaks the text apart, and it doesn't really look very good. So I want to change the text wrapping here. And one way we can do that is if we have our picture selected, we can go over to Layout Options, and we can change the text wrapping right here. I can make it square so that it kind of wraps around, make it tight, whatever. One thing I really like is I like to do in front of text. That way, I can put my picture really wherever I want, and it will not affect the text whatsoever. We're going to talk about that when we get into ordering objects in Microsoft Word a little bit later in this video. All right, so now I have my picture. Ooh, real quick, let me show you how to bring in a picture from online. It's actually kind of easy. Go to Insert, then we have Online Pictures. We can go in here, we can search for whatever we want. I'll just grab this apple. That looks good. Sure, that one looks fine. And we will insert my apple picture into the document. Now, whenever you bring in pictures from online, if they can find the license, the Creative Commons license, or who that photo belongs to, they'll automatically put it into the bottom of the picture, which is really helpful because we don't want to steal other people's work. And so this helps us to stay, morally okay with using images. So I'm going to go ahead and change the wrapping here to on top so I can kind of put it wherever I want. Now there's a white background on this image, so I'm going to shrink it down so it doesn't mess with our text too much. All right, cool. So that's how to bring in images from either on your computer or from the internet. All right. Now I want to talk about cropping, and we'll get into some borders and stuff like that. So let's say this picture has just too much extra space around it. I don't want all of this in my picture. So what I want to do is I want to perform something called a crop. Crop is where you cut out certain parts of the image that don't necessarily need to be there. So if you look at your picture tools that popped up with the context-sensitive menus with Microsoft Word, I have the picture selected. So my picture tools format options pulled up. Over here on the right-hand side, I have crop. Now I have options. I can crop it to a specific shape, which we'll get to in a minute. I'm just going to do a basic crop for now. When I click crop, I can see that I have these black lines. I have the black corner, the black lines on the side, on the bottom, on the top. These lines are going to allow me to change what part of my image is going to be represented. The dark gray is going to get cut out of the picture completely. Okay, so I can really crop it really nice. And now when I'm done cropping, I can just click outside of it, and now my picture is cropped down to that size. That's a really helpful tool. Now let's say I want to actually crop this to a shape. I want to make this a lightning bolt, right? It's just as easy as cropping it, picking the shape that you want, and it will automatically format it into that shape. Now, not all shapes are going to look great, so it's on you to practice and play around with it and figure out what you want. Now, some shapes you can actually modify the shape just by clicking and dragging certain elements. Like I can make these arms skinnier or fatter based on how I want, right? So that's cropping to a shape. Let's talk about borders. I'm going to add a border around the Spanish Club logo here. Now, what I can do is I can just go into picture border. I can change the color of my picture border, and it gives me a very basic colored border around my image. Or I can pick a different picture style to add a custom border to it. I can actually add some reflections below. There are tons and tons and tons of styles we can use. I can crop it to a circle and add some more effects to it. Just whatever looks nice for my picture. Okay. Now, let's say I have a picture. Let's bring in a new picture. Let's insert an online picture, and we will say, I don't know, sure, we'll do baseball. We'll bring in a baseball picture. We'll bring in a photograph. How about that? So I'm going to insert my photograph, and it'll pop them down here. Okay, so now I have this picture of this baseball player, and let's say I want to make some color corrections, or I want to make some corrections to this image. I can change the brightness and contrast of this image just by selecting certain options. I can make it brighter, make it darker. I can actually go into my picture corrections options and make all the changes I want. I can change the sharpness. I can look for specific presets, find some good ones. Right, so that's made it really sharp and nice. Let's see. We could change the color. I can drop some colors on top of it. Give it a nice pink overlay. Change the color tone if I want. Make it a cool picture. Make it more cool. That looks nice. But there's all kinds of artistic effects and colors and things I can apply to pictures to make them look exactly the way I want them to look. I can make it tiled. There we go. Whatever I want to do. So it's up to you. Play around with it. Have fun with it. There are a lot of things you can do with pictures in Microsoft Word. That looks cool. All right. So let's talk about shapes. So those are images that I would get either on my computer or online. But what about adding shapes to Microsoft Word that Word already has for us? So if we go down to shapes in our insert tab, we have a ton of different shapes that we can actually enter. We can add arrows, we can add smiley faces, we can add stars and banners. We can add all kinds of stuff. Now, notice I clicked it and nothing happened. I didn't actually add anything yet. My cursor changed to that cool looking cross. What this is telling me to do is click and drag to build the shape and put it where I want it to go. Now, the same text wrapping and all that stuff applies to shapes, as well as adding, borders and stuff like that. But one thing that I want to show you is with shapes, because they're drawn objects, we can actually change the fill of the shape. We can fill it with a specific color. We can change the outline of the shape to a specific color. We can add some effects to the shape to give it a nice, cool looking bezel. Ooh, look at that. With just a couple clicks, we can really make things look awesome, right? We can make our shapes look really cool. And there are shape styles here that we can play around with as well. We can give it specific styles. We can even change the shapes. We can modify, edit the specific points of a shape. So maybe we don't like it like that. Maybe we want it to be a little bit more shallow on the points. We can do whatever we want. It's our shape. We can make it however we want it to be. So anyway, shapes are really powerful, and you're going to want to spend some time playing around with shapes. All right. Let's talk about text boxes. Text boxes are super cool. So with text boxes, we have images and shapes and everything else, but what happens if I just want to create a box where I can type some text into, and I don't want it to be a part of the rest of the document? Well, I can insert text box over here, and if I click the drop-down menu, I have some options here, some presets that I can put in. For example, I can put in a sidebar that has some formatting applied to it already. It pushes my text out of the way for me, which is great. I could type whatever I want. I actually don't want, I'm going to delete it. Get rid of it. Okay. So we can use presets, or we can draw our own text boxes by just clicking the text box button. Oh, come on. Let me draw my own. Oh, there we go. Draw text box. And then it gives me that same cursor. I draw the text box. I type whatever I want to type. And then I can modify it, move it, put it wherever I want, right? And it's treated just like an image. I can change the wrapping and everything else. So text boxes are really versatile as well. They're really helpful. And I can format the text box in the same way. I can change the styles and the shape and the color. I can add a background to it, and, all kinds of stuff. All right, let's talk about aligning, ordering, and grouping. So aligning objects is really important. Let's say I want this picture, and my text box all to be aligned perfectly in the center of my document. Now, if you're confused as to how I selected all three of those, I just selected the first one, held down the Shift key or the Control key. Control works for this too. And then I selected each one. And now with all of those selected, I can actually align my objects in a way that makes it look really, really nice. So if I go to my format options, either on drawing tools or picture tools, doesn't matter, and I go to align, I can actually align them to the center. Now it's going to center those objects on themselves, or I can align them to the middle horizontally. I can align things to the page. I can align things to the margin. Let's do page. And then I'll align them to center, so it'll be in the center of the page. I can align them, let's see, distribute vertically, so it evenly distributes those objects vertically. Okay, so align is really, really helpful for getting things where you want them to go. All right, I'm going to go ahead and move this guy out of the way. What about grouping? Let's say I want this shape to now be a part of this picture forever. I want them to be changed together. I want them to be deleted together. I want all the corrections to be made to both of them at the same time. Well, what I can do is I can select both of them. And then when I go into my picture tools, I can actually use this option right here, Group Objects, and just click Group. And now they're together. Now they're together. I can move them together. I can resize them. I can make any corrections I want to this object because now it's one single solitary object. Now if I want to ungroup the object, I can just go in and click Ungroup. and now they're ungrouped. Okay, ordering. Now look what happened. All right, I ungrouped my objects, and now my shape is underneath my picture. Well, what if I don't want that to happen? Well, what I can do is I can go to Format, and I can go to, where we go? Yeah, Send Backwards, Bring Forward. So these two options right here, these allow me to change the ordering of the objects. If something is brought forward, it means it is brought on top of the object that it's behind. So I can click Bring Forward, and I can even say Bring Forward or Bring to the Front. If I click Bring to Front, it just puts it all the way on top of everything. So I can click Bring to Front. So now that's on top all the time. And so those those ordering tools are really, really helpful if you're trying to get shapes to look good together. Let's talk about tables. I'm going to go down here, and actually I'm going to get rid of some of these objects. Let's get rid of them. We don't need them anymore. Oh, there we go. Okay, so let's create a table. So tables are actually pretty easy. If we go to Insert, we have this option for Table, and we can click the little arrow, and we can actually just pick how big we want our table to be. We want, let's say we want 5 columns, and columns are going left to right. And let's say we want, well, they're going up and down, but they're ordered left to right. And let's say we want 5 or 7 rows, and rows are ordered up and down, and they go left to right. So this here is a column. This is a row. So now I've just created a table, and in this table I can insert whatever I want. I can add text. I can add images into my table. Let's get some foxes. I can put images in my tables. I can put really any other object I want into my tables. I can put shapes and whatever, right? Tables are really versatile. Tables, you'll mostly just be seeing tables being used to create or to organize your text in a way that makes it visually interesting. But I want to show you a really cool way to enter tables. Let's say you already have the information you want. I'm going to... Oh, whatever. Get out of the way. Let's say you already have the information you want. Let's say I want this here, all this text, to be inside of a table. Well, if I select it and go to Insert, Table, I can choose Convert Text to Table. And this works really well. I can choose how many columns I want, and let's say I want, I don't know, how many options do we have? 7. Let's say I want 7 columns and 5 rows. That works. And click OK. It's going to take all my stuff and it's going to put it into a table. Now, this text doesn't really look good at all as a table, but some information that you use, you'll see there's an assignment later on where you will use this feature to make some really cool looking text or really cool looking tables. Speaking of really cool looking, you can modify your tables however you want, same design and layout ideas. We can, Word has some really cool options for tables where we can just do a basic design in our table. Choose, one like that, make it look exactly how we want it. We can also modify it by changing shading and border styles and all that stuff. We can also add new rows and columns. From here, we can split our tables apart. We can change the grid lines. We can organize, all that stuff. Tables are really versatile in Microsoft Word. All right, let's talk about charts, because charts are super fun, and I know all of you are only taking this class just so you can learn how to put charts into Microsoft Word documents. So let's do it. All right, so I'm going to click Insert, and I'm going to go over here to Chart. Now, there are a ton of charts here, and I'm not going to spend an hour explaining which each of these are, but very quickly we have column charts, which are great for looking at differences between sets of objects. We have a line chart, which is great for seeing the change of a specific object in one variable. So like, GDP or, what have you, your GPA over time. We have a pie chart. Pie charts are great for looking at how individuals, work in relationship to a whole. We have bar charts, which is kind of like a pie or kind of like a column chart. It's just on its side. We have area charts, so you can see how much something takes up in a specific area. So we can see, it's kind of like a line chart, but they're filled in. Those are cool. We have scatter charts, which are great for looking for standard deviations above the mean, which is a statistical term, which you may not care about, but we can see outliers in specific situations. These are really cool. We can create maps. We can create stock charts, surface, radar, tree maps for data, sunburst, all kinds of stuff. There's all kinds of cool charts in here, right? So I'm going to just create a very simple pie chart because that's really what most of us are going to use, right? Now, before I click OK, I can look at specific options. I can have an exploded pie chart. I can have an exploded pie bar hybrid. I can do this cool donut looking thing. I can do a 3D one. I'll do the donut. Why not? I'm going to click OK. Now, a couple things happened. First of all, you'll notice that I have this new window. This window is actually Microsoft Excel. Okay, so Microsoft Word uses Microsoft Excel to handle data. And it's okay, you don't have to know how to use Microsoft Excel to be able to create charts in Word. It helps, but you don't have to be an expert in Excel to make cool looking charts in Word, right? What we do want to know though is we want to take a look at our chart. We have one data set. We have one data set in a pie chart, and that data set is sales. How many sales do we have? And then inside that data set, we have specific sections of that data set. So for example, in this data set, we have sales. Let's say instead of sales, I want this to be, I don't know, Father's Day presents, right? Because Father's Day is coming up, and I'm going to track how much my family loves me by the amount of presents each one gives me, right? And so let's say I have my son, and he gives me 12 Father's Day presents. Great. Let's say I have my daughter, and she gives me 22 Father's Day presents because she loves me more. And let's say I have my wife, and she only gives me 3 Father's Day presents because she wants to be in trouble, right? Well, I only have these 3. I don't need this extra column. So I can actually just delete that out of the data set, and now that data no longer exists. But if I want to really be careful, cover my bases, I can actually adjust how big the data set is by changing those. But anyway, you get it. So it has son, daughter, wife, and it organizes how much each member of my family loves me, depending on how much they bought for me on Father's Day. So now when I'm done, I can just exit out of that, and now I have my chart. It's really simple. Now, the cool thing is, even though my data is in there, now I can go in and change the formatting. I can make it look really good. I can change how it looks and pick a format that looks really great for my chart itself. Now let's say I like this, but I don't generally like the colors. I can go in and change my colors to a different scheme. I can, let's say I want them to be all blue, although that doesn't look very good, so let's go back to that one. I can change the layout of my pie chart. I can add elements from here. I can add a chart element, labels and whatnot. I can even go in and, let's say I made a mistake in the data. I can even go in to modify the data even more by going over here to edit data in Excel. And then it will pull up, well, it's taken forever. I almost just crashed. So it had to open up the entire application, Microsoft Excel. So now I have my data, and let's say my wife, she felt bad about not getting me all the presents, so she went back and she got me another 4 presents from the store, right? I'm gonna close that out, and now my wife, she's not as much in the doghouse as she used to be. So charts are really, really helpful. They're really cool. We can change the type of chart. Even after we've created it, map's not really gonna work. Change it to a scatter plot. So anyway, play around with charts. It's a really cool tool, really handy, especially for writing those science papers. If you really want to impress your science teachers, there you go. There's some charts. Now, I've been talking for over 25 minutes now, so I'm going to shut up and I'm going to let you play. I'm going to let you practice and let you get better at this kind of stuff while I go get a drink of water. Thanks for paying attention. I'll see you next time.